Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Meiliana Dewi. We are here to discuss the main topic, namely translation as a product and a process. I will start this discussion with the definition of translation. First, the definition of translation in general. We know that translation is transferring a meaning by writing text from SL to TL, or search language to target language. Second, what is translation according to Lawrence Finity 2000? Translation is the interpretation of the meaning of a text in one language, the source text, and the production in another language of an equivalent text, the target text or translation that communicates the same message. It was emphasized that the resulting target language must be compatible with the original source language because equivalence is the keyword in the translation process. Thus, the message in the target language will be proportional to the message from the source language. On the other hand, if the result of a translation in the source language isn't commensurate, the result isn't considered as a translation. So there are three elements of translation that must be known before going to the stage of re-expressing the message. After discovering the message, we must really understand the meaning so that the result in the target language are the same as the original language. For your information, anything that is written can be translated. Advertisement, books, games, legal document, website, and subtitle. Okay, enough from me. Discussion will be continued with my friend Rizka Amelia Tanjung.
Here I will explain a little about translation according to Kohler. Before we get to know Kohler any further and his opinion about translation, I will start with introduce about translation. Translation is an incredible wide notion which can be understood in the different way. For instance, one may talk of translation as a process or a product, and identify such subtypes as literary translation, technical translation, legal translation, journalistic translation, etc.
To know a little about Kohler. Who the Kohler is? Kohler's full name is Werner Kohler.
Birth date 14 December 1942 in Zurich. Is a Swiss linguist and emeritus professor of German linguistics at the German Studies Institute of the University of Bergen.
According to the Kohlers, translation is the result of a process, or in other words, in the result of translation, the text from the source language into the target language text. In a similar vein, Kohlers describe text processing activity and significance translation as a simultaneously high act of the equivalence. For him, translation can be understood as the result of a text processing activity by means of which source language text between the resulting text in L2 and the source text L1. There exists a relationship or equivalence relation.
To be a professional translator, we have to have four skills. The first one, advanced language knowledge. To translate well, you don't just need a good knowledge of the language you are translating, but you need excellent advanced knowledge of that language. Why? Because without it, subtle and even not subtle will be missing. And if you don't fully understand the language, you won't ever be able to translate accurately. The reality is that the few people learning a foreign language ever reach advanced level. 2. Excellent writing skill. To be a good translator, you can't just be educated or okay writer in your target language. You need to be excellent writer, a good wordsmith. You must have a way with words, be able to write with flair, pizzazz, and elan. Why? Because your text needs to impress the reader across a variety of style. For example, for marketing, formal or legal, casual or colloquial, technical text, or etc. It's extremely rare for someone to become talented referee writer if their education were conducted in that language, which is why professional translator or translate only into their native language, or more correctly, the language they were educated. Example like us. We are
Number 3. Attention to detail. Attention to detail is the ability to achieve precision and accuracy when completing tests. A translator is required to have this ability to process accuracy so that it can reflect an attitude of professionalism. Hopefully, theologians and writers say attention to detail is the secret of success in every sphere of life. A little kindness, little acts of consideration, little appreciation, little confidence. Therefore, attention to detail is very important because with that ability, a person will reflect meticulous, accurate, and professional attitude. For sound translation and review process, sound translation and review process are the abilities where the translator must be able to review the choice of vocabulary and grammar system. That way, whenever they translate any page of text, they can do it right, and the meaning that is wanted to be expressed can be confident.
Types of written translation, so many types. And the number one, technical translation. The term technical translation can be understood in the two ways. It is broader science. It's about translating user manual, instruction leaflets, internal notes, medical translation, and the financial reports, minutes of proceeding, administrative, trade in general, and support. And the continue in the scientific translation and the technical translation. As a tip, a name indicates scientific translation deals with document in the domain of science, for example, in the article, days in the paper, congress, book list in the conference, and the presentation, study reports, acting, etc. Okay, continue. Number 3, legal translation. In the legal translation covers a wide range of different documents. Can the administrative text such as registration, certificates, corporate status, and remittance, draft, and the technical document such as expert opinion, and the text for judicial purpose, and the number of other, and the text addition to report of minutes of courts and the proceeding, and then any others. And the number 4, and the certified translation. A certified translation or sworn translator may use their signature to authenticate official and the translation. These are usually documents in which you require legal validation and are used referred to as certified or sworn, and the certified translator and often work in the courtrooms, and as juridical translator are actually in the capacity of a legal expert as well as providing translation in the of civil status documentation and the marital agreement and the divorce.
Here we will discuss about translation as a product and what is the meaning. Of course, we will discuss what is translation as a product. Translation as a product, another meaning implied in the name translation, refers to product itself. And then the translate material or the concrete translation product, which is produced by the translator. And in his book Becoming a Translator, Douglas Robinson states the following: translation is the parenting for different goals. For those who are not translators, it is primarily a text. For people who are, it is primarily an activity. The translator is a mediator or a bridge between the writer and the text reader. Translator that it is a translation process that occurs in the translator brain cognitively, which produces and translation product. And a translation as product, a theory of translation as a product, a theory of translation text. This is will require a study of text now, merely the means of the traditional levels of linguistic analysis, syntax and semantics, but also making use of stylistic and recent advance in the text linguistic and discourse analysis. And then, thus, as an example of translation as a product, which we can see essayed by Douglas Robinson, uh, his book entitled Becoming a Translation, and like the picture above is a book made by Douglas Robinson. That's what I can explain about translation as a product.
My name is Nurul Fida. Today I will explain about translation as a process. Translation is a process of converting message through feeling, order, or any other verbal uninterested expresses in one language into message of the same meaning and value in another language. Different language use different name to label this process, but all of these names indicate that this process consists of conversation and transmission of message to people who do not use the source language system and cannot understand the message coded without the processes of conversation and transmission into the system that they use for communication. For the message to be translated into another language or the target language, it must be expressed in the source language and it must remain the same in both language. The receivers of the translation of message must receive the same content and the receive of the original message. For example, man is a thinking animal. The translation is A. Manusia adalah makhluk yang berpikir. B. Manusia adalah hewan yang berpikir. If we see A and B translation of product, when we look at it from the point of view of translation, it is a process. Then we will pay attention and we will choose which is animal is makhluk. Why? Because when we carry out a conversation from one language to another, we will carry out a process in the form of social belief and culture and the like, where the language will be translated so that the sense we receive in the form of the translation will be the same as what we receive from the information. The source language A and B are translation is just done. We will look from the perspective of the process. We will see that there is one of the two translation which is more appropriate because the other process includes social element that suggests cultural element, so that the answer that A and the B is also translation, but from in terms of the process of translation B, no one read like translation, so the difference is that translation is a process, meaning that there is a flow that must be followed, and the second is translation. Whatever product A or B products is received to as translation. Okay, level of the process of translation. In fact, Newmark said that the process of translation operates in 4 levels. Source text level, in the source of itself and its immediate impression on the translator. Referential level, the level of content of the text, technically the level of the conceptual representation. Cohesive level, the level where you aim at making a cohesive target text and analyze the cohesion of the source text.
Translation as a process translation basically refers to 3 things, namely, and 1, the process of translating that occurs in the mind, and 2, product of translation, result, and 3, abstract concept related to the translation process and product as a process. Translation does not happen immediately to translator first reads, then write. Translation by involving his conscious choice before finally producing a translation product. This 1% view of the translating procedure. Okay, thank you.
Classifies of translation process. Newmark 1988-144 classifies this text in the translation process into 3 steps as follows. 1. Interpret and analyze the source language text. This activity is intended to comprehensively understand and analyze the source text, both in terms of language style, text type, syntax, and grammatical, so that the overall mistakes of the BSU text can be identified correctly. 2. Selecting the equivalent at the word-to-sentence level in the target text language. In this text, the translator seeks to find and decide on the equivalent of cultural terms in the target language that are appropriate to the terms intended in the source language text. And last, rearrange the text.
Rearrange of text is done based on according to the author intents, the expectation of the target language text reader, and the norms of the target language. This text is the text of reproduction of what has been produced in the previous text. In this text, it is possible for the translator to repeat the proper steps if a discrepancy is found in the translation result. Thank you.